Welcome to the Devon Great Consols Mine virtual tour. We start our tour at the Tailings car park, where there is also a cafe and it's near the tree surfer facility for kids. We go then towards the north, towards Wheel Anna Maria, and then along the former minerals railway track towards Wheel Josiah and the tunnel. Then enter the main part of the site where we can see the Sandy and the tailings tip to the south, and there's an information centre. We then go north towards the Chimney car park, which is now closed, into the woodlands where there is a picnic area, then down into the Calciner complex, which is the main contaminated area, and then south past the Cinders tip and early arsenic works into the woodland where there's some mountain biking tracks, and along the southern trail towards the southern end of the tailings tip. We explore the sandy tip in more detail, and then make our way across Blanchdown Added and back to the Tamer trails. So to start, here's the cafe at the car park facility, and the entrance to the trail is giving information on what the site is all about. This is near the entrance of the track, and there are some children's facilities where they build shelters in the woodland, and there are normally in non-COVID time a number of activities scheduled here. There's also an archery range, the tree surface. Then towards the north we can see the first evidence of some mine spoil heaps near the track, and then we can see some pictures here of the trail that is used by various means: horse riding, biking, pushchair and buggy facilities. It goes through agricultural fields as well, and it's basically along former mineral railway, and you can see a number of archaeological sites as well. Here is Wheel Anna Maria, and there's some effluent coming that pools down way below the track. This is an embankment we are walking on, which is the railway connection with Llewellyn Quay, where the minerals and the extracted refined ore has been sold and shipped down the Tamer in barges. So you can see there is a lot of water pooling up. And then we go along the track. There are a number of mine shafts that have been made safe, a little bit of kind of poetry installed, some benches to rest. And we go along further along the mineral track, and some areas are closed off that you shouldn't be going along, and this is soon coming up to a path. Sorry, that was my dog. So we're coming soon up to a path that is closed off, but there's only a sign, no entrance, nothing more than that. There are numerous tracks that shouldn't be used but are freely accessible, and as you can see, there are a number of quarries as well. People using the track for dog walking and so on, and this is one of those typical cut-throughs along the mineral railway going towards the main Devon Great Consols site where the spoil heaps were. Again, a number of diversions here. You can see the ochre, quite clearly evidence of mine spoil that is right along the track, very well overgrown. Here is another mine spoil tip that is from Wheel Josiah, and we are very near the site and of Wheel Josiah, which is not accessible for us. And there's another no entrance sign, and again very easy to get to. And ahead we see Wheel Josiah tunnel, and this is where the railway cut through a tunnel, and the tunnel was it's still now collapsed, but is going through mine spoil. The track has been engineered around this main mine spoil. It's very big rubble. It's mainly sort of overburdened rock, but also some tailings in there. And when you're looking closer, which will be in a minute, we'll see quite distinctly mineralized rocks there. And there's a lot of overburden in that area. And I'll show you in a minute some close-ups of particular rocks. And you can see a metallic sheen, and you can see this kind of rusty color, which is indicative of mineralization, a lot of iron in there, some lichen growing on that as well. And that metallic sheen is basically, it's weathered pyrite and other sulfide minerals that you can see. The area is open to explore, as you can see my dog can just run on there. And there is no fencing, nothing curtailing your enjoyment of the site, so to speak. Which also means that if there is potentially toxic material in there, it is clearly accessible. And this is another part of the collapsed tunnel that goes through this mine spoil heap of Wheel Josiah. Picnic bench right next to it, and we are now getting towards the site itself, the main site, and this little part of the video is walking towards it. And this is really the end of the mineral railway going into the site and leading towards the calciners where the arsenic was refined. And that is more or less the latest activity there, apart from reworking some of the mine spoil tips later on. Excuse me. And you see all around quite easily accessible bits of mine spoil that contain quite a lot of arsenic, mixed rubble, former buildings of former works being torn down and dumped amongst the mine spoil heaps. There's another one of those information boards that show how many trails there are, the several tens of miles of trails along the River Tamar there in different aspects, for biking, for hiking, for access by horse. So there, the main contaminated spoil heaps, they're fenced off, but you can see how easy it is for people to just climb over it. And in here we find a very contaminated site. To the south there we're looking over the main spoil heaps, the sandy tip and the tailings tip. Some of it is quite well vegetated and other bits are barren. And here's an information center which gives you a little bit of an insight what the site is all about. In the paper that Andy Turner and I wrote together, we have also investigated the contamination within the dust on the floor of this information center, and that was quite contaminated because it's so near the mine spoil heaps. And you can see that again there the Tamar Trails information board, some bits on the vegetation and how important the site is for certain animal and plant species, a bit of information about the workings as a copper and then later as an arsenic mine. The information center has no roof, and so the dust can blow in, and there is very little information about the actual dangers today. It's more about the glorious past rather than the present. There's an aerial picture of the site as it more or less is today. We are now having another look at the sandy tip and across an area to the Calciner complex, which is an archaeological site that is quite important for its industrial archaeological value. These are the Labyrinth where the arsenic was refined, and there's some mills and some calciners and an information board, and you can see a number of visitors, unbeknown to me, going into the site and taking their little dogs with them, and the only thing that informs them that there might be some problem is a small area, a small sign that there's a hazardous area with arsenic contamination. Before we go into the Calciner complex, I'm just going to go up towards the car park, the chimney car park, and that goes through an open gate past a workings area where there used to be a lot of woodland work, a timber yard and so on, that is very easily accessible also. And this timber yard is, I believe, now out of use since we've published the article. All the timber stacks have been removed because this is again a very contaminated area where there used to be mine spoil heap that have been flattened. You can see on the path there is no vegetation, simply because the where the chimney car park used to be, there was a massive mine spoil heap, and this is where we are now on the chimney car park, and that has been flattened, and the contaminated material had been spread in order to make way for car park, and it's been spread onto these pathways, which are now highly contaminated with the material, as you can read in the article. So since we've published the article, there has been a rudimentary closing of this car park now.
Let's go this way.
And what I'm really glad to see is that we have some chippings from the woodland area, from the woodland workings, going over this. I'm so quite glad about that, because I hope that they're going to spread these chippings to close over the surface, because in the background you might have just glimpsed a few cottages which are inhabited by people, and it would be great if this dust bowl, I mean, maybe not in the present circumstances when it's all wet, would be actually covered with chippings, so the dust from the mine spoil cannot whip up and go into people's gardens so much anymore. Moving on to the trail again, we are now going into a woodland area. You can see a swing there. Along this path here is picnic areas and picnic benches, and then you can go into another part of the site which we won't be visiting today, which is less contaminated, and this is this kind of big sweep around that you can see in the paper where there is less contamination. Back towards the mineral railway trail, and this is a lake or a pond at the back of the Calciners, which is easily accessible for dogs to swim in, and I've been seeing people letting their dogs in there. And then we go around the back of the Calciners, and this is the real Anna Maria Calciner complex from the top end, and from there you can also enter the spoil heaps, the cinder spoil heaps, and you can just see the no entry sign. What they've done here, they've produced some decking over the Calciner flue that goes into the Labyrinth, where the arsenic was condensed, which we see here. This is the outside of the Labyrinth, and the white incrustations around here, you can see is arsenic trioxide blooming out. This is from former arsenic works, and it's still in the mortar, and it just comes out as efflorescent salts, which is called, through wetting and drying. The path here has been covered with inert material, although the dust blowing around from the site means that there is again a little bit more arsenic contamination accumulating there over time. There is no barrier to reach the Labyrinth itself, although you can't go in easily because of the fences. You can actually stumble around and go there, and especially children can reach the contaminated material, the efflorescent salts, very, very easily, which I believe is dangerous. There's a bit of a viewing platform with information board, and you can see there's also some other material blooming out. The blue is usually indicative of copper, a residual copper in the stone brickwork. So these are the efflorescent salts. They're 75,000 micrograms per kilogram of arsenic in there, which is 7.5% by weight. This is the entrance to the flues, and here is another overview from that to the sandy tip, and then going down towards the tailings tip. So they are the two main arsenic containing tips, and then sweeping across a relatively well vegetated site or part of the site and looking over the old arsenic works, and another sweep across where you will be able to see the cinders tip, which is highly contaminated with arsenic as well. And this is the area where the mountain biking used to be allowed. Just a shot along the track towards the mountain biking site that was used by Gorton Gravity Hub. This is one of the trails that used to be used and now is forbidden since we published the article. The landowner gladly happily closed this off. Actual physical barriers being erected, and this is one of the sites that went straight onto the highly contaminated spoil heaps. The Gravity Hub has now put up information boards that show clearly which parts are permitted and which parts, well, they don't list those non-permissive parts anymore. So luckily now we have a situation where there are physical barriers for mountain bikers not to be going down where my dog just goes. I'll call him back in a minute. Which are highly contaminated with arsenic. So this is basically a board, information board with the open lines, the bits where you shouldn't go with nice skull and crossbones, and then some rules and regulations on who can and who cannot actually go onto these trails. The most of the trails now are in the woodlands. You can see one of them here, and they are relatively uncontaminated. There wouldn't be any danger from contamination going onto these. Moving along, there is now the other entrance to the big sweep around the back of the site through the woodland, which is in the paper as relatively uncontaminated, and we're not going there on this tour. It's just a lovely woodland walk that gets you alongside the river for a while and then sweeps around to the Fanny area. Well, we are going down the southern end, or the southern trail of Devon Great Consul's mine now, where we have access that isn't overt, but is quite easy into the southern tailing tip. Yeah, so here there is no fence. The fence was there, but it's been taken down. You can just wander into the woodland, nothing's stopping you. And this is what we're doing to access the southern end of the tailings tip. And you can see how open this site is to just wandering in, even though from the top of the site where we entered the main site, there are fences. Here in the south there aren't at the moment, so we can go easily into this area. Okay, it's a bit of a scramble, but we can go easily into this area to get to the southern tip, which is very fine tailings tip. It is from reworking some of the mine spoil that has been deposited early on, so later reworking. If you read the history of this site, you will find out when and how that happened. And it is quite clayey, sandy material, or silty clay material that is quite stable, although a little while ago there has been a redirection of water onto this tip, which resulted in a massive breach of the tailings dam and some loss of material over the spoil heap, from the spoil heap over into the wider environment. Now this is the entrance to the sandy tip, so this is a little diversion between the tailings and the sandy tip, and you can see this very rusty colored material here, which is the bottom end of the main Anna Maria dressing floor, as some call it, or the sandy tip as I call it here. Some water coming out of it from a culvert and going between in the space between the sandy tip and the tailings tip to the right, to the left. And again, there isn't very much stopping you accessing the bottom of this tip. You can see footprints, that people are scrambling up and down it, and there are also footprints of animals, of course. And it's fairly unvegetated because it's very loose. Leaving this area and going towards Blanchdown Added, there is another entrance into a little track that is only shut off by a sign, no entry. It's very easy to get there, and it gets us to the outflow of Blanchdown Added. So this stream comes down from Wheel Anna Maria and then comes down towards Blanchdown Added, and what we're walking on now is the kind of
stay. Hey, Tiska, stay.
I'm getting quite worried about Tiska running into the soggy area. So this is precipitated ochre. All of this material has been precipitated out from the Blanchdown Added outflow, highly arsenic contaminated water, and there was a wall being built around this area to capture this precipitate and remove some of the arsenic and iron and other contaminants and metals out of this. So this is kind of a precipitation area that is meant to be capturing some of the contamination. And it was in operation until fairly recently, so maybe December time. This is the actual added outflow. It's quite a small stream, and this is the main input of arsenic into the Tamar. And what they've done recently is, instead of letting this outflow flow evenly over this large precipitation area, they have dug this trench that is new since December, and directed it into a lower area. So the whole of the outflow is directed away from this precipitation area at the top into a precipitation area further down the bottom. I don't know why they did that, probably because this precipitation area is absolutely full, but it's now drying out. And formerly you couldn't walk across it, you would just simply sink in. And now they've directed it away, and it goes down a wall into a lower precipitation area, which is smaller, but it's not quite as effective either. And it then joins the stream, the Anna Maria stream, and goes into the Tamar underneath the path that we came along. So this is still the upper area, and that's zooming in on the lower area where now the precipitation takes place. And I don't know who makes those decisions, whether there's a consultancy involved in advising to redirect this or whatever it is. And you can see the highly ochreous material here. So moving along, this is what you can see here is the waterfall from the upper precipitation area into the lower one, and again it's very close to where you can easily access kids and dogs running around and wanting to play with this nice and colourful outflow of water. And there's another view of how it spreads from the upper area, and you could have just also see that the precipitation area, the upper area, is about maybe 3 meters thick or so of pure ochre. And I wonder what happens when this dries up, whether it actually will consolidate or whether it will be prone to erosion in heavy rainfalls. I'm not quite certain how it will behave over time. So you can see various different precipitates and rotting leaves in there. An oily sheen is indicating the presence and activity of bacteria. I've seen that in other areas of mine spoil. and added outflows in France and in Spain and in places. Here precipitation on leaves, incrustations, really, iron oxyhydroxides, iron oxyhydroxysulfides, co-precipitating metals with that, and arsenic. So it's quite a toxic mix, I expect. And we can see here a fence in the background where the main track goes along, and we will join that in a minute. And here is, just through the woodland trees, you can see how this area is shaping up over time with some standing water, and then that overflow goes into the culvert that is going under the track, that is open to the public, and into the farmland, again into a river. There's the beginning of the culvert, and that goes under the track, comes out here, flows towards the farmland, where I think it's culverted again underneath Blanchdown Farm, and then into the Tamar. And this is just a few pictures.